The subject of taking a vow or making a vow, it's a very serious subject, since the Torah tells us clearly whatever comes out of our mouth should be fulfilled. So trace a situation. Someone committed himself to fast 10 times. And then he said, all right, it's a very hot summer, so I'm going to do that, but during the winter time. Is that okay, or he needs to do it right away? So that's part of our discussion. Let's just review what we discussed in the previous daf. We learned in the Mishnah, kinui neder, some type of verbal expression that have a manner of vow. It's considering as a neder. And then we talk about yad neder, and we explain that it's like a half a matter of a neder. Neder, we explain, is not really vow. It's like very serious commitment. For example, you said to someone, "Ata tiyeh mudar alai," you are prohibited upon me, but you don't specify. You don't go to the whole detail. So we explained before, if you remember, it's like a vessel with a yad, with a handler. So that's basically considering as a matter of neder. We said that that's basically chasure mechasra, it's missing, we need to add, and that's what we add to the Mishnah, yad neder, meaning partially verbal expression, it's considered as a neder. And we explain, I'll just give you overview so far, that the Mishnah starts with simple, something that it's obvious, kinui neder, the same as a neder. A verbal expression that has a resonate of neder is considering as a neder. And then we have the din mechudash. So we are, 3 lines from top of page 3. Ve'i ba'iteima yadot aide da'atyan midrasha mefaresh lo bereisha. That's what we explained in the previous shi'ur. We said that partial statement that we learn from the exposition, so that's the way we start first, and then we go further with something that it's more chidush. V'liftach aden bereisha. Just review what we study at the end of previous shiur. Miftach badach bekinuin deoraita bereisha, v'adar mefaresh yadot atlen midrasha. So you start with something that is clearly biblical, and then you go something that we have derivative by exposition. So first we start with the din yadot, then you go by the kinuyim. הניחא למאן דאמר כינויים לשון נוכרים, אלא למאן דאמר לשון שבדו להם חכמים להיות נודר בו, מה יקרא להם? We explain that there are 2 avenues. One is a different language. You can use French, you can use Italian, it's many different languages, versus a language that the rabbis come out with a different expression that the person use. So if this is something that the sages come out, so it's something that it's not as obvious as yadot. Obviously yadot, it's much simpler. Miktan yadot v'lav chasur mechas alei. Akdim name v'tan yadot. That's what we explained at the end of the previous shi'ur. Kol yadot nedarim kendarim v'chol kinui nedarim kendarim ve'elo en yadot ha'omer lechavro ve'elo en kinuyim konam konach konas. So again, this is an expression. Instead of saying in a full way, we said it partially, and we explained it in the previous shi'ur. So basically what we understand the yad neder is the same as a neder, kinui neder is like a neder. Now this is something that we should remember. The Be'ur Halacha in the Mishnah Berurah, he dealt with issues of havarot. Think about the Torah reading. So Lashon HaKodesh, when it's come to expression in Hebrew, you have many different nuschaot. You cannot put the way that the Russian Jew expresses himself to the Yemenite Jew expresses himself. Now the question is, the Be'ur Halacha asks a question, what happens if it's a Torah reading? You go to a place and the Torah reader is reading in a different expression, different havara, different kinuyim. Is that acceptable? Is that permissible? So the Be'ur Halacha tried to say that it's all depend upon nusach shemevinim, which means a language that people understand. So he holds that ra'ui lachmir. If you have a choice, if you go to a place that there are several shuls, so you should go to a place that you have the masoret avot, the way that you have they inherited, and this is the language that you should feel comfortable. But by the same token, Rav Sternbuch, the great South African rabbi that immigrated now to Hanof, Yerushalayim, so Rabbi Sternbuch explains that in nowadays a person can yotzei the chovah, can fulfill even it's a different nuschaot, because as long as you understand the text, you understand what the person expresses, that's good enough. Anyway, v'yadot heicha ktiv. So how do you know that when it's come to yadot nedarim, that it's only part of it's only partial declaration of the vow? So the text is the book of Bamidbar, chapter 6, pasuk, verse 2. Ish ki afli lindor neder, nazir lehazir lahashem. So yafli, it means he separated himself from wine or anything that relate to Nazirite, such as we explain attaching to a corpse, shaving the head, etc. So Unkelus over there explained yafli yafresh, which means he expresses in his own language, in his own words, the language of Nazirite. Vetanya, nazir lehazir, la'asot kinuyei nazirut kinzirut. So since they use that term nazir lehazir, so it's a substitute for the language of Nezirut, Nazirite vows, like Nazirite vows, v'yadot Nezirut kinzirut, and imitations or partial declaration of Nazirite vows is the same as Nazirite vow. Ainli ela binzirut. I understand that we hold the adot when it's applied to Nezirut bindarim minayin. How do you know that that's applied also to making a neder? Talmud lomar, ish ki afli lindor neder le'azir la'Hashem. So here you learn by using the verbal juxtaposition, makish nezirut lindarim. You juxtapose nezirut vows to other vows. How? Undarim lenezirut. Ma nezirut asa bo yedot nezirut kinzirut. The same way as partially declaration, you make it as a total one. Af nedarim, the same way is nedarim. Asa bem yedot nedarim kindarim. You said that imitations of vows, you take it as a vow. Uma nedarim over bebal yachel u bebal te'acher. If someone prohibit himself and make a neder, and he violated that, for example, he said, this bread is prohibited upon me, right? And then he went ahead and he ate it, so he is in a violation of negative Torah commandment. The Torah said in the book of Bamidbar, book of Numbers, chapter 30, verse 3, Ish ki dor neder la Hashem, a person that make a vow to God, lo yachel dvaro, which means, for example, someone committed himself to bring an offering. So we count the festivals, we all know, right? Pesach, Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. So we have a yearly cycle to wait how long he can wait for that vow. So if it's Sukkot, he have about what? Half a year. If it's Pesach, he have a full year. Then, if he passed that time, so he is in violation, the Ran explained, of lo te'acher. So that's apply nidrei ekdesh. The Ran said that's, as we said the previous shiur, the sanctification of holy things like offering to the temple, but not in nidrei isur. Later, on page 63, we said that it's also applied to nidrei isur. There's a big discussion among the rabbis if that's applies to both or not. Anyway, So he said, אף נזירות עובר בבל יחל ובל תאחר. Later, the Gemara elaborates how exactly happened by the Nazir. ומה נדרים האב מפר נדרי ביתו ובעל מפר נדרי אשתו? The same way as the Neder. The father can abrogate the vows of his minor young daughter, and the husband can annul, can expunge the commitment, the verbal commitment of his wife, meaning the Torah said in the book of Bamidbar, book of Numbers, chapter 30, that the father or the husband has the power to annul, to abrogate a vow, a nedarim that either the daughter or the wife made. For sure, it's in a certain condition we're going to discuss on chapters 10 and 11 in this tractate. אף נזירות, the same way as נזירית, האב מפר נזירות ביתו, ובעל מפר נזירות אשתו. So, here, you see that we juxtapose the same way as the father can make, if his daughter make herself a Nazirite, he can annul that. The same way a husband can do it to his wife. So the late Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, asks, what's the chidush? What's the big chidush in Bal Yachel? So he said, when you come to Bal Yachel, what happened is, the halot neder, the effectiveness of the neder, happen later. It's not happen right away. For example, if someone said, I will be Nazir, I will commit myself to be Nazir over so and so and so, and that applies, for example, a week from now. So the halot neder, the effectiveness of Feinstein explained, happen later. It is not in a way retroactive act or predestined act. It's something that happened in reality later. So here it's explained beautifully. Ma'ishna, so the Gemara challenge why we need to learn from this verbal juxtaposition. Ma'ishna gabed neziru dichtiv nazir lehazir. Why we say that when it's come to Nazirite, that's the source of the Yadod. Nedarim name active, because when you make a Nedarim, it's written Lindor Neder. So you see here, all type of Nedarim, that's the Shita Mikubetzet said, Vehekeisha Lamali. So why you need to use this type of comparison, this verbal juxtaposition of all the vow to Nazirite vows in order to derive that partial declaration of vow like vow. Why and when this can be derived from the double turn when it's come to a very general vow. So the Gemara said, I katav neder lindo ki dechatav nazir lehazir. If the Torah had written a neder by vowing, so which meaning the same way as a nazir to obtain, kide ke'amart, that's follow the way you said. So lo tzarich hekeisha, you do not need this verbal juxtaposition between the two. Hashta dichtiv lindor neder. Now, but you said the language that vowing a neder, so it's no signification when you repeat it. Dibra Torah kilshon bnei Adam. This is something that we said many times, that the Torah used a language that it's a human language. It's called anthropomorphic, which means using a language that people use day by day. Sometimes people repeat certain things. That's what the Torah meant when they use in the book of Bamidbar, chapter 30, le'esor isar, lekayem kol davar. We said in the book of Ruth, chapter 4. So lindor neder, it means, or nazir lazir, it's yitur. So we derive from that nazirut kinzirut, nedarim minzirut. That's the language. The Torah did not repeat it in order to have a exposition. הניחא למאן דאמר דאיתלי דיברה תורה כלשון בני אדם. This word works out well, follow the one who said that the Torah spoke in the language of people. אלא למאן דלית לדיברה תורה כלשון בני אדם, but the one who did not hold that the Torah speaks in the language of people, hay lindor neder, mai avidlei. So when the Torah used the term to utter a vow, so what's what exposition we learn it? Because if you learn from the juxtaposition between Neder to Nazir, that Yadot Nedarim, it's in effect why you need the repetition of Lindor Neder. So they said, Darishlei, we derive Asot Yadot Nedarim Kindarim, Umakish Nezirut Lindarim. So there are two purposes. One, we expound to, if you do a partial neder, it's like neder itself, like vow itself, and the juxtaposition of Nazir vow to other vows, because we want to teach us if you have a partial matter of vow, like the Nazir, in the Nazir, so other halachot we derive from that. So it's basically, in a way, is the opposite order. So it means Nazir lehazir, it looks like superfluous. So Nazir lehazir darishlei, so by using to vow of a Nazirite to consecrate himself, we derive from that melamed, to teach us. Page 3b, shanezirut chal al hanezirut. Someone said, I'm taking upon myself to be a Nazir of today. And then he said, I'm hereby to be a Nazir as of today. So he has basically the second as is like you have a double. It's a double time. It usually is a 30, right? So you have a 60 days. And one who said that Torah speaking in a people's language, ונזיר להזיר, so you don't derive anything from לנדור נדר, נזיר להזיר דריש לעשות ידות נזירות כנזירות, partially נזיר is like fully, ושהנזירות חי על נזירות מנהלי, how do you know that it can go double? הניחא היא סבירה לכמה דאמר נזירות חי על נזירות, so that's something we're going to study on page 17. אלא היא סבירה לכמה דאמר נזירות חי על נזירות מנהלי, so neimakra lizor my lehazir. So here you have the letter hey that you basically derive another halacha when you use the term lindor. It's like lehafil, lif'ol. So the shita mekubetzet and the Ran have a different avenue how you exchange this lamed and hey. But the idea here, Shamat mina tarti. One, yadot, partially nezirut is the same as nezirut, and also nezirut chal al nezirut. One go upon the other. So that's the idea of nazir lehazir. Gemarrah Rabbi Weisblum is another option that they teach in Eretz Israel. It's the west of Babylon. It tana demapik leliadot min lindor neder. There is the tana who derives the effectiveness of using a partial vow from the verse they said by vowing a neder, ve'itana, and there is an etana that mapikle mean what we study from the book of Bamidbar, chapter 30, verse 3, kechol hayotze mipiv ya'ase, which means anything that come out of his, proceed out of his mouth. So this inclusive formulation of this verse comes to include partial imitations of vow. Now, so the meaning of the Bnei Ma'arav of Eretz Israel is to say that the one is no one can study the both, which is Yadot and Nazirut, Chala Nazirut, min Nazir leHazir. Everyone said that by using the term Nazir leHazir, meaning Nazirut, Chala Nazirut, one Nazirut can be at the top of the other. Yadot you derive from Lindo Neder, Kechol Hayotze Mipiv Yaseh, etc. That's the way the Rosh and the Ran explain. Amar Mar. So the master said in the Braita, Uma Nedarim over beval yacher ubal yachel, the same as the vow. One who breaks, he is in violation of what? He shall not profane, and he shall fulfill his vow, and he shall not delay. So bishlama bal yachel din darim ashkachat la, kegon de'amar kikar zo ochal velo achala. If you go positive, you said, I'm going to eat this type of bread, and didn't eat it. So Akiva Iger tells us that Neder is basically hefza. You go by the item that you are prohibited upon a person. But to act upon certain wording, so that's different. For example, this bread is prohibited upon me. So there is a different view here how you said it. I said at the very beginning, the book Shalmei Nedarim explained to us that there are so many girsaot. Here, for example, between the Shita Mikubes, Rabbi Akiva Iger, it's few different. But anyway, Kikar zo ochal velo achala. I commit myself to eat this bread and I didn't eat it. Over mishum bal yachel dvaro, because he is basically in violation. The Torah said, you shall not profane your words. Ela bal yachel din zirut echem ashkachat la. But when it's come to he shall not profane in a case of Nezirut, Nezirite vows, how can you find these circumstances? Kevan de'amar hareini nazir, the moment that the person said, I commit myself to be Nazir, Nezirite, Havale Nazir, so he is already in his framework of Nezirite. Achal kam lebeval yochal, if he ate, he in violation, he shall not eat. That's from the book of Numbers, chapter 6, verse 4. Shata, if he drank wine, kamlei beval yishte, he is liable for violation of the prohibition, he shall not drink. So, you see here, if he ate something that came from the grape wine, he is in violation of the negative commandment that prohibited Nazirite to eat something that comes out of the vine. And if he drank wine or other liquids that come from wine, he is in violation that prohibited Nazirite to drink them. So how you come to a situation that Nazirite is in violation of only shall not profane without any others? So he said, Amarava la'avor alav bishnaim, that he is rendered for liable of violation two prohibitions. Two prohibition, the prohibition of bal yachel in the matter of Nezirot, he shall not profane. So it means that he should not be in two violation when he violated his own vow, which means is bal yachel in addition to bal yochal or bal yishteh, should not eat or drink. Now we derive the second din from the Braita that we compare Nedarim to Nezirut. Bal te'acher din zirut echem ashkachat la. Give me an example of the commandment one should not delay that apply when it's come to Nazirut. He said, Keivan de Amar, when he declared and he said, Hareini Nazir, I'm hereby a Nazir, Havalei Nazir, he is automatically a Nazir. Aval kamlei beval yochal achal, but if he eats a grape wine or things like that, so he is in violation that you should not eat such a produce. So or if drank wine, something that came from the vine, he is in that violation. So the Gemara tried to say that be'omer lech she'ertze ye nazir. I'm not a Nazirite right now, but when I wish, I desire, I shall be a Nazir. So in that case, the Gemara rejected, said if that's the case, v'amar kshe'ertze leikabal te'acher. So if he said, when I desire, so it's not a commandment, you should not delay. But why? Because he said a very clear stipulation. And he said that it happens, right? So, meaning when I desire, so he's still not desired. So, when is you shall not delay apply to Nazirut? So, Gemara said, Amar Rava kegon de Amar, lo yipater min ha'olam ad she'en nazir. I will not passed, or not departed from this world without first I'm going to be Nazir. Now, how do you know when he's going to pass? So they said, the mina isha ata vele Nazir. From that very moment, he is obligated to be Nazir. So therefore, the whole idea of Bal Te'acher should not delay. When he delayed, it's applied from that very moment if he's not doing it right away. A proof to that. Mide dehava haomer li ishto is the same as someone said, in analogous to one who said to his wife, Harei zo gitech sha'a achat kodim mitati. So, is the reason why he does that. But basically he said, here's your divorce paper, the bill of divorce, that they take effect a moment before my death. Why he said it? He basically wants to exempt her from Yibum. Trace a situation, Reuven and Shimon. And the wife of Reuven is Tamar. They have no children. Reuven is now very ill. He knew that Tamar can't stand his brother. He wanted to exempt her from all this crisis or sorrow of Levirite or Chalitza or whatever involved. He wanted that just to go over that and she is free to do whatever it is. So if he is not divorcing her now, she's basically Zkukat Yibum and she need to wait until Shimon will do either Yibum or Chalitza. So meanwhile, she's stuck, right? However, if Reuven divorced her before he passed away, she does not need to Yibum. So what he tried to do, a huge favor for her. He wants to divorce her now. But he said, you know what? This apply retroactively. Right? So the question is, Asura le'echol bitruma miyad. If he is a Kohen, so the moment you do that, even you are still living, and it may happen that you not die the next moment and maybe take long time before you pass. But the whole idea of her eating truma, consecrated items, it's only because she married you as a Kohen. But since there's a possibility for him to pass right away, so retroactively, if she ate the truma, the consecrated item, she considering zar, someone who is out of that realm, and she basically prohibited to eat truma. Alma, what we derive from that? Amrinan kol she'ata ve'she'ata dilma mayet. Every single moment, it may happen that he is gone. So therefore, since that maybe happen that every second the husband will now die, hachename, we compare that le'altar, when it's come to someone who vow, is obligated to be a Nazir, that's apply immediately. Have a Nazir, damrina dilma hashta mayet, because we said that maybe he will now die. So that's, you derive from the get to also the idea of passing. Now, the rabbi said that it's an issue to compare Nazirite to divorce matter, because if in divorce matter she go ahead and she ate from truma and the husband not pass, she's not violated Torah law. The Nazirite, if he's not passed, he violated Torah law of you shall not delay. So every second is in violation. But you see here the Ran and the other Rosh and Magen Avraham that have a lot of discussions. I want to conclude with Taf Kuf Samechet. That's the code the Magen Avraham explained to us in that chapter 568. The Shulchan Aruch said, trace a situation. Someone committed himself to fast, 10 days of fasting. So the code said, you have to fast, right? Thing is, as we said, the person figure out it's a hot summer. The days are long. It's too much. Guess what? I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do that in the winter. So the Magen Avraham asks a question, is that not Bal Te'acher? You should not delay. He's not in the violation. So the Magen Avraham explained, no. The idea is you have to differentiate between D'chiyah lo lezman bilti mugbal, which means you postponing it, but not for everlasting. You postponing it for a certain period of time. He differentiated between samuch, something that happened soon, to zman aroch. If it's zman aroch, if something that who knows later, and you just keep postponing it, then it's a violation. But if you just move that commitment from the hot summer to very soon to be following the summer, the fall and the winter time, which the days are much shorter, so that's basically close in a proximity manner. It's very close. So therefore, the Magen Avraham said that that's fine. But if he's just postponing it for long, zman aroch, then it's different. So basically, Magen Avraham said you can do that under certain condition. But again, it's better to stipulate it very clearly and lucidly in advance.
Shuloim, Malachai, Shuloim, Malachai.